My name's Tom Goldtooth, Executive Director of the Indigenous Environmental Network, based here in Minnesota.
We're here at the Building Green Learning Summit, and it's our understanding that you've been doing some work related to climate change, and maybe you could bring our audience up to date on some of the other international or global activities that have been going on.
Yes, we have a number of things that we've been working on within the Indigenous Environmental Network. First is working with Native communities from the United States, including Alaska and Canada, and networking with Indigenous peoples globally around the issues of environmental justice. So we've been doing this work for about 20 years. And then within the past 12 years, we started to focus on what we framed as environmental, climate, and energy justice. And it's an area that we've been working on specifically as a campaign on a number of levels. One is increasing the level of understanding and capacity for Native communities to engage in climate policy issues from a local level, from a tribal level, as well as state level, national level, and international level. A couple months ago, we attended the Conference of the Parties 15 of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, bringing a delegation of Native American and First Nation people from Canada who are experiencing environmental justice issues on the front line, mostly from oil development, coal development, a lot of the fossil fuel systems, as well as climate change impacts. So we've been working on that level. The recognition of Indigenous people's rights is very critical in climate policy work because a lot of the solutions, the mitigation of climate change does impact directly Indigenous people territories, whether it's in the north or the south. So we've been advocates of Indigenous peoples to meet with, like for an example, the State Department of the United States. We put pressure on the State Department saying you have to exercise government-to-government relationship and brief and have consultation with tribal leaders, as well as our community people who are on the front line of struggle. So we've been working towards that and globally lifting up international human rights instruments such as the Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. One of the mitigation solutions being negotiated in these international climate meetings has been using forests of the South in developing countries as a commodity, what we call forest offsets. And so it does involve property rights, and that's why the rights of Indigenous peoples have to be recognized. Otherwise, these mitigations, like using forests for offsets in areas that Indigenous peoples live, is very critical because we don't want land grabs. We don't want Indigenous people to end up being evicted from these lands that are basically purchased by polluting entities of the North.
Question. I understand that following Copenhagen, there was another meeting in Bolivia that some attended. I believe you did go to Bolivia.
Yes,
and there were some direct outcomes as a result of that meeting. Maybe for the audience you can connect the two.
Yes. Well, again, under the principle of Indigenous people speak for ourselves, we brought representatives from impacted communities to Bolivia. We were invited by the President Evo Morales, which is the only Indigenous elected leader of a government of the world. This is Bolivia, and we've been working with his delegation in these international climate negotiations for a couple of years. And because of what happened in Copenhagen, that's the 15th session, really raised the eyebrows of civil society. It raised the concern of developing countries around what we call climate equity issues. And when we look at the whole scenario of climate change, we find that developing countries don't have the infrastructure to adapt and have mitigation solutions. And so developing countries raised the concept of the industrialized countries putting up money, hard dollars, on what's called ecological, historical climate debt. That what we're experiencing right now is basically the result of the concentration of greenhouse gases for the past 80, 90 years, okay? So, and that's going to continue. What China and India, as developing countries, are putting up into the atmosphere right now, we're not going to feel that effect until about another 40, 50 years. So it's very critical that people see that, you know, there is a responsibility, if anything, a moral responsibility for industrialized countries who have been the main contributor of this problem of climate change, global warming, to put up some hard dollars to help developing countries to make a transition to adapt to the changing climate. So Evo Morales is one of the leaders that stepped up and said that, you know, we need to have our own international global summit, and that's what he did. It's the World People Climate Summit on Rights of Indigenous People in Climate. And 35,000 people came. A lot of American people came. People in environmental justice, environmental groups, women's groups, workers. It was really powerful to see the convergence of social movements throughout the world who mobilized there. And there were 47 governments officially there. There's 17 working groups working out some hard issues. And we didn't have much time, but you know, people rolled up their sleeves and came out of there with agreements by consensus. So there's a document called the Cochabamba People's Agreement that people can search on the web page, and also the draft Universal Declaration on the Rights of Mother Earth, which is very critical. It's what the indigenous peoples been talking about for decades, is that, you know, people of the world have to really reevaluate what your relationship is to the sacredness of Mother Earth. In the United States, as we know, you know, we have this addiction to energy. We're consuming too much, and what Evo Morales also talked about is that we have to really look at the issues of climate change from a framework of looking at systemic change. And he said we need new economic systems that don't exploit workers, that don't exploit Mother Earth and its natural resources. Mother Earth cannot supply and meet the demands of capitalism. I mean, that's the big C word. So what does that mean for us in the United States? What does that mean for us that are educators, environmentalists, environmental justice activists? It means that we have to do some deep analysis when we talk about climate change, when we talk about green economies, green jobs. We have to really look deep and not put a Band-Aid on this, on these solutions, and look for real solutions that's not going to only turn this climate crisis around, but also help us to have solutions in building healthy, safe, sustainable communities.
Very good. So good. Okay, now you have to say your name and organization.
My name's Tom Goldtooth.